So, good day everyone. Today we will be talking about Leucippus, one of the earliest and most important figures of ancient Greek philosophy. Leucippus was often credited as the founder of the atomist school of atomists. Leucippus lived around the 5th century BCE, and during a time where Greek philosophers were trying to figure out or understand the true nature of reality. Some believed that everything was made from one single substance, and some thought that the world was constantly changing. Leucippus, on the other hand, stood right in the middle of this debate. What makes him special, if you may ask? Well, what made him special is that he tried to reconcile reason with experience. Philosophers before him, like Parmenides and Zeno, argued that change and motion were very impossible, and that reality was one, unchanging, and eternal. But people could clearly see that change and motion was everywhere. And here Leucippus asked, how can we make sense of change without giving up reason? His answer was bold and revolutionary. He proposed that everything in existence is made up of tiny, indivisible particles called atoms, moving in empty space, or what we call the void. These atoms are too small to see, but by joining and separating, they form everything we call experience, from the air we breathe to the stars in the sky. Leucippus' ideas later expanded by Democritus, his student, but it was Leucippus who first took the daring step of explaining the universe without using gods, myths, or mysterious forces. He believed that everything happens according to reason and necessity. In other words, by nature, by laws, not by chance or divine will. Even though none of his writings survived, his legacy lives on, the way he thinks that the world can be understood through natural causes and logical explanations. He became a foundation then for later science and philosophy. In short, Leucippus marks a turning point in human thought. He helped shift philosophy from myth to reason, from divine stories to scientific reasons or explanations, by introducing an idea of atoms in the void. He laid the groundwork of how we understand nature even to this day.
Atomism. According to philosopher Leucippus, atoms are the building blocks of all reality. He described them that all things are composed of atoms which are indivisible, internal, invisible, and solid. First is indivisible, meaning they are the smallest units of matter and cannot be divided further. Second is internal. Atoms are uncreated and will never be destroyed. They neither come into being and always existed. Third is invisible. They're too small to be perceived by the senses that we see and only understand them through reasons. And lastly, solid. Each atom is compact and impenetrable, but they differ in size, shape, and arrangement, which explains why things in the world look and feel different. Now that we understand that atoms don't just stay still, they move endlessly in what Leucippus called the void, which is simply called as empty space. Even though it's nothing, Leucippus believed that void is still real, because it allows atoms to move, collide, and combine, forming everything we see around us. So in simple terms, motion and change exist because they're both being, which is interpreted as atoms, and non-being is interpreted like the void. And for the example, think about the sand on the beach. From far away, it looks like one smooth surface, but when we look closely, it is made of countless tiny grains. Leucippus said that reality works the same way. What we see, like a rock, a tree, or even our own body, seems solid and whole, but in truth, everything is made up of countless invisible particles called atoms. Each grain of sand represents an atom, which is described as tiny, indivisible, and internal. And for the void, it is like the space between the grains. It may look like nothing, but what it allows the atoms to move, combine, and form everything in the universe. So just like a sand and grains come together to form a beach, atoms come together in different ways to form the entire world we live in.
What is reality? So for Leucippus, reality is made up of atoms and the void, which both are real, eternal, and necessary. He believed that reality is purely physical, no magic, no mystery, no chances, only atoms, which what things are made of, and the void, the empty space where the things can move or combine together. Um, and it is also governed by natural laws, not by chances, which the atoms plus the void plus motion plus necessity equals to reality. There's no chance or randomness, um, which everything follows a logical cause. It's believed that everything happens out of necessity, influenced later philosophical thoughts, especially determinism. Um, uh, Reality for Leucippus is a vast law governed um, of eternal atoms moving in an empty space where everything we see or feel is just the result of an atomic interaction. Uh, there is no magic, no mystery, or chance. So that's his claim about what is reality, the atoms and the void.
So, according to Leucippus, the void is actually one of the most important parts of the universe. He was one of the first philosophers to come up with the atomist theory, which says that everything around us is made up of two things, atoms and the void. Atoms are tiny, solid, and indivisible particles that make up everything that exists. But for these atoms to move, collide, and form different things, there needs to be empty space between them. And that's what Leucippus called the void. He believed that if there were no voids, atoms wouldn't be able to move at all, and nothing could change or come into existence. So even though the void seems like nothing, it's actually very important. It makes motion and creation possible. For Leucippus, the universe is made up of something and nothing. The atoms represent what exists, and the void represents the space that allows existence to happen. Without emptiness, there would be no movement, and without movement, there would be no life or creation.
So now, I will be discussing the legacy of Leucippus, what he left behind. He founded the atomist school of philosophy. He explained the world through atoms and void, not mythical or divine explanations. He gave a mechanical view of nature. All events follow reason and necessity. His ideas were later developed by Democritus, and he also marked a key shift from myth to rational explanation of reality.
To wrap everything, Leucippus gave a philosophy a new direction, one that focused on reason instead of myth, and on natural explanations instead of divine causes. Despite none of his works being known, his legacy still lives on through his students and his ideas. His belief that nothing happens at random, but everything happens from reason and necessity captures the heart of his philosophy. It reminds us that the world follows order and logic, not chance. While earlier thinkers searched for what reality is made of, Leucippus went a step further. He showed that understanding comes from looking deeper, beyond what we can see or touch. Through these ideas that everything in the universe comes from the motion of tiny indivisible atoms in empty space, he opened the door to a new way of thinking, one that would later inspire both philosophy and science. But more than just explaining the physical world, Leucippus challenged us to think rationally and to seek reasons behind every event, every change, and every question we face. His legacy is not only about atoms in the void, but also about a mindset, one that values curiosity, logic, and the search for truth. So as we end this discussion, let us remember Leucippus not only as a founder of the atomist school, but a thinker who showed that even the simplest idea can shape how humanity understands reality.